Yeah, well, I'm very happy to be given this opportunity to present our work to you. Maybe just a brief background. Thomas Falk is my name. I am working for the International Food Policy Research Institute in the Natural Resource Resilience unit. And I'm also working for the Philipps University of Marburg in the working group on sustainable use of natural resources. I'm institutional economist by background. Most of my work focused on natural resource governance issues. I worked a lot in the drylands, in particular in Southern Africa, but also in South Asia. And today I would like to use the opportunity to share some specific aspect of our work, of my work. An aspect which on which I focus quite a lot of my time over the last years and which excites me a lot. And I hope that I will be able to excite you as well. So let me share screen. I hope you can see the presentation. Can you give me a signal, please?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay.
Yes.
Great. Wonderful. So I want to talk about experiential learning, in particular games, to support institutional and behavioral change. And I put this, of course, as the focal interest of DesertNet International is on the drylands. I put this in the context of water management in the drylands. So overall, I mean, just starting with a bit of background, even though the audience is probably fully aware of the situation. We face severe water security issues in the global drylands. It now already affects more than 1 billion people, and most of the affected ones live in drylands. In particular, in drylands, water is a key limiting factor for, in particular, agricultural production, but also other productive uses. It is highly sensitive to precipitation dynamics, and which are affected by climate change. And then in the face of physical, institutional, and behavioral path dependencies, which strongly drive then water use patterns, we experience a situation where, in particular in the face of climate change, this water insecurity becomes more and more severe. So it's important. We see here Lindsay's a figure from Lindsay's relatively recent work, where she and the co-authors outline different dimensions of water scarcity. But I want to highlight that it's not necessarily that water security is worse in drylands if the demand, if the use patterns are actually aligned to the available water. But we observe that there is a strong push of extracting more and more water, and this becomes even more critical in the face of climate change, resulting then in much more severe water insecurity. And Lindsay and co-authors prognose that within a few decades, probably half of the world's population is at risk of living under high water stress. Now, putting this into the Indian context, I will talk in particular about the application of experiential learning in India, we see that 45% of India, of the Indian territory, faces high to extreme water stress. India is the largest groundwater user in the world. At the same time, we see that aquifers experience a strong decline. It has much to do with a very strong politicization of water use. You win elections in India with promising people water access. And yeah, almost 60% of irrigation and 85% of drinking water needs in rural India is met from groundwater, and almost 90% of the groundwater extracted in India is used for irrigation needs for agricultural purposes. We see at the same time massive NGO and government investments in natural resource management, in particular watershed projects and rainwater harvesting infrastructure maintenance, but there's a very strong focus on supply side and technology focused interventions. Now, coming back at Lindsay's work, what they highlighted is that addressing these issues requires really to work with the complexity of the system. There is the demand side, there's a supply side, there is the demand side. It all has to be seen in a framework of more regional or local governance, where equity plays an important role, but then also higher level governance and policy frameworks which regulate the water management. And looking at this systemic perspective, we engaged in India with different partners in a project where we develop pathways for supporting stronger water security in India. And I don't want you to read the details of this illustration here. It's more symbolic. And let me just roughly explain to you what you see in this figure. So the starting point for our consortium, and you see some of the key consortium partner logos here. The starting point for us was a behavioral change perspective. So we were asking which actors in this water governance sphere would need to change something in their behavior, in their actions, in their practices, in the way of how they are doing their businesses, in order to lead to systemic changes which support water security. And these actors are illustrated in the blue boxes in the middle of this figure. And then for these actors, we ask more specifically, what actually would these actors need to change to bring about the systemic change which we want to see? And from there, really specific to the behavioral change we are looking at, we ask ourselves, what kind of interventions, approaches, tools would be required to support this behavioral change? So the main thing I want to emphasize here is that we have this systemic focus as our starting point. But then we zoom in at particular behavior of actor arenas, and look more specifically how we can support change there. And the focus of this presentation or this webinar today is on the local action situation. Key actors here are farmers and community leaders. It's a simplified illustration, of course. There are some more which play a role, but just to illustrate it. Yeah. So, and we identified supply and demand side behavioral change outcomes for community leaders and farmers, and then we identify different tools or develop different tools which we think can support this behavioral change by triggering behavioral drivers. And so there is a crop water budgeting, which basically just, it's a participatory tool which very roughly estimates the water available in the community in a particular year or season, and then helps the community to take decisions on how to use this water. There is a tool which the CLAR tool for as another example, which is a GIS-based tool which helps communities based on biophysical parameters, data, and some information you feed in to take decisions on where it's most appropriate, most effective, efficient to create water harvesting structures. We establish a monitoring system for groundwater levels as another instrument, and some more. Yeah. In this webinar now today, I want to focus on our water games, our experiential learning games, as tools which capture in particular this collective action challenge. And this if we just work with, for instance, crop water budgeting or CLAD, we work basically on the assumption that there is one decision maker who then takes the most reasonable choices. But we very often face social dilemmas in this water management, water as a common pool resource, groundwater, which is also not very visible, creating additional challenges. So with these games, we try to address in particular these collective action challenges. So what are experiential learning games? We see them as structured spaces to acquire knowledge by experiencing, reflecting, and experimenting. They simulate long-term decisions in a short time. So very often in water management, your choices or you experience the consequences of your choices today only after a long period of time, and then there is a lot of noise and you cannot really associate it with your choice at the end anymore, or you can find good excuses why outcomes are the way they are. Now the games try to condense this and create shorter feedback loops, and in this way support learning. We encourage discussion of the challenges communities face, water management challenges they face. The games allow to experiment with different institutional arrangements, introducing rules. They help to understand what motivates people, in particular in this collective action arena. And we hope that they shape mental models and understanding of relationships. There is an increasing interest in learning games. I was looking for a more recent statistics, but it's just the amount also of academic publications on serious games, on experiential learning games, also in the field of sustainability science, has increased over the last years tremendously. This website here, Games for Sustainability, for the interested ones, you find basically a repository of tools here for research purposes, for development support purposes, and also for education in games which intend to support education. Now we really thought this through, this system theory of change, which I presented before, is the one level, and then we, even as we go into the learning games, we really think or thought a lot about what what do these games need to achieve to actually create or make a contribution to the systemic change we want to see. And this is a conceptual framework which we recently published. And in the gray field, which you see here, this is basically the real life management challenge, which, for instance, a community faces. You have different actors of the community who take their choices, who take their decisions, then act on their decisions, or which creates feedbacks to the context. All this whole water management challenge is, of course, embedded in a real life context. And now, what do we want to achieve with the games? And for the games, you see this kind of peach-colored box in the center, where we try to create or simulate this real-life management challenge in a game, where then players, as members of the communities, can learn about this challenge, can experience the feedbacks, basically what I talked about before. And as they take their decisions in the game and they see immediately the outcomes, we are hoping that this is then changing their mental models, their norms, creating or triggering different behavioral changes, which then again lead to changes in the real life context also. So behavior here would have in particular 3 dimensions, the behavioral changes we want to target. On the one hand, this is provisioning actions in terms of contribution to water harvesting, infrastructure development. Then another provisioning action is institutional service provision. So this is basically the community creating internal rules. Then and then the third one are appropriation actions. So basically the use of the water, the demand side. To give you an idea of what are these games, we have developed different games. Let me just share with you 2 of them. Our surface water game is based on a common pool resource game, which has been in its structure developed by Marco Jansen and Jan Camilo Cardenas already quite some time ago. And the players, in this case 7 players per session, have to take 2 decisions. They first contribute to a hypothetical dam, to the maintenance of the dam, which basically determines how much water in the game round the players will have available. And the second choice would be the choice of a crop, where there is the trade-off between profit and water requirement. There is a more water efficient crop which gives slightly less income, and there is a more water intensive crop which gives slightly more profit. We include asymmetric access, and this means that the first player gets water first, then the second player. So the following players in the sequence, they can only take what the upstream players have left. And we play 5 rounds with first without communication, then 5 rounds with communication, and the debriefing is a critical element. I will come back to that. The groundwater game is played with 5 players. Typically, we play with men and women groups separately. Basically, there is a water table. and the players can choose again a water efficient or a water consumptive crop, and there is an annual recharge. So every round there is water recharge of the groundwater, and if the crop choices lead to more water extraction, then the recharge will be the groundwater level will drop, and that can go then over the rounds up to a level where it becomes critical, and basically the system breaks down and no water is available for irrigation anymore. That's where the game would then end. Again, we play with some rounds without communication and some with communication. The debriefing is critical. As it becomes clear, we can play only with a few players in the community, but we want to reach community at a larger level. So for the debriefing, everybody can join again. The basic of the game are again described, but the most important part is that the players then share their experience, connect the game experience to their real life management challenge, and yeah, the intention is really also to trigger that the participants in the debriefings will then discuss possible solutions for this management challenge. We have done basically a series of studies. The first study started some 10 years ago, only at some few sites. We collected some anecdotal evidence on local governance changes here. Then as we went on, the numbers where we implemented the games increased. I will talk a little bit about the surface water game study in Madhya Pradesh a little bit later, where we have done a randomized controlled trial. And what I probably want to draw your attention on, we are currently implementing a project in 5 states in 6 states of India, reaching more than 4,500 communities. And we are also doing an impact assessment there, and I'm happy to share with you some results of that impact assessment too. I also want to tell you that we are in the process of exploring how the games which were developed for India can be applied in different contexts. We did some pilots in Ethiopia and Ghana. So as promised, some more information on the Madhya Pradesh study. Here we carried out the intervention in 56 randomly selected villages in one particular block in Madhya Pradesh. And we played with farmers who rely on irrigation water, on surface water for irrigation for their livelihood. And we did a baseline and a follow-up survey and collected data during these surveys, both for the treated sites as well as 27 control villages. And so some interesting findings here. We see, so our theory of change basically has been that the games change norms and understanding, then this would lead to some changes in local rules. So community members would change rules, which then would change behavior. But we don't find an effect on the local governance, on the local water management rules, but we find a very strong effect on the maintenance activities. Almost 2 years after the intervention, village key informants reported with a 20% higher probability that maintenance activities took place compared to the control site. Another interesting finding, and this is not controlling, this is not comparing with the control sites, but we looked deeper into the sites where we conducted the intervention, so only the treated sites. And here we find that if in a session female community leaders participated, we have a higher likelihood that women participated who are not leaders. And then if more women participated who were not leaders, then we also see a higher likelihood of establishing dam maintenance rules, or that new rules or have been created in that community. And we see in general a relation between dam maintenance rules and the actual dam maintenance. So this relation is which we also assumed in our theory of change. We can see it. We only do not observe it in the comparison with the control sites, which I will probably come back later to some conclusions we draw from there. Now, let me come back to this ongoing study on scaling up the experiential learning. I mentioned already we are working in 6 Indian states. We targeted 3,500. We reached 4,500. We basically followed the process which I just described, and we did an impact assessment here with 314 treated sites and comparing it with 158 control sites. And here is the list of our hypotheses, and it basically follows again this logic of a theory of change. We assume that the games first support better system understanding, that this will also affect injunctive norms related to sustainable water management. We, as an aspect of decision making, we hope that the games support stronger women involvement in water-related decision making. We assume that after the intervention, more investments are made in local water management rules as institutional service provision. We also assume that even existing water management rules are better enforced as another dimension of institutional service provision. We also assume that, again, the maintenance activities of water harvesting structures increase, which results in better conditions of water-related infrastructure. And we also, on the demand side, assume that more water-efficient crops are chosen, and at the end we hope that the water tables improve. I cannot present you results for all our hypotheses, but let me go through some of the results, and I think it creates a quite interesting picture. So looking at our first hypothesis, we do not see really changes in system understanding. If we look at the descriptive statistics, we see that the system understanding also in the control sites was already quite advanced. So this could have potentially explained this result. But as we now go to the injunctive norms, in particular for one of our most critical norm variables, namely whether communities should make groundwater-related rules, we see a very strong result. This is the top blue coefficient line up here. We see less support for surface water rules, even negative significant results. Here it's interesting. We had 2 rollouts of the game intervention, and if we look at the players who played the game twice, we see a much more pronounced results. Here we see across almost all of our norm indicators a trend in the direction we want to see. and also the index which we created out of these variables is strongly significant. Looking at the hypothesis on women involvement in decision making, the women who participated in our games reported more likely than compared to the control group that they are involved in crop choice decisions. But interestingly, we also find that the men who were involved in our decision and in our intervention, the result is not significant in this model at least, but the trend is that in tendency, they report also more likely that they are the ones who exclusively and without the spouse take the decision. So that could or raises our awareness that we probably need to work more strongly with the men here as well and integrate them more strongly in the gender-related interventions. Then related to water management, our results related to water management rules. Again, for the overall sample, we don't see a result which is consistent, again, with the Madhya Pradesh study, which I presented before. But here as well, if we look only at the ones who played the game twice, they report more likely that rules are there. Now, these are the same individuals as the ones who report in the communities that there are no rules. So it's probably not good to take this as an indicator whether there are rules or not, but rather as an indicator of rule awareness. Regarding investments in water harvesting structures, we see, again, consistent with the Madhya Pradesh study, a clear trend that there is more investments in the treated communities, in particular as it comes to monitoring contributions to infrastructure maintenance. So the overall pattern is we see some changes in norms, and less so in terms of system understanding. We see some gender outcomes, even though we need to be aware that there is also a risk of doing harm if men then who, if they participate after they participated, do not include women more strongly. We overall see that we struggle to find system level changes. So we also calculated a couple of, or basically for all the indicators, we also calculated community level indicators, and there we don't see the changes yet. But even without local institutional change, we see again a behavioral change, and there's a stronger effect of repetition. We, in particular, as it comes to the system level changes and the local institutional changes, there may be a need for a longer term follow-up. Maybe our end line survey was too short after the intervention. It was basically just 2 months after the intervention in this case. I also want to share some more general lessons we learned in terms also of game design. There is a trade-off between simple and abstract framing of the games. So more abstract and simple framings are easier to facilitate. They support more general system understanding and activate also more universal fairness norms, while a more complex and adapted framing, many of these simulation model-based games are very much adapted to a particular environment. They are more complex to facilitate. They support, of course, system understanding at a different degree, and support in this way also decision making more directly, and are also able to create stronger links between the game experience and the real life experience. Or the question is whether such games are better able to support also changes in local governance. What is important for us for the game design is that we really move from a frontal teaching, and this is probably one key aspect of the approach, to provide space for a participatory search for solutions. This is based on the assumptions that if community members find their own solution, they are stronger accepted, which reduces enforcement costs, and are better adapted to the specific context. We face a challenge with facilitators who are used to typically the teaching mode, that they need to learn limiting their input and trust that solutions from the community will emerge. Overall, we conclude that this co-design process creates a feeling of ownership, increases trust, and stimulates commitment among participants. Something which is very important, which we pay in particular attention to, is to be more conscious and also support the facilitators more strongly in selecting the right tool for the right purpose. So it kept happening that a game was played where then the community members expressed that this game is not relevant to them, and very often it wasn't relevant. So we really need to make sure that the right tool is applied at the right place. It's very important that experiments for research have different requirements than the ones for facilitating learning. I express this because basically this whole discussion also by Juan Camilo Jadenas started by observing some side learning effects of research games. We argue that it's probably not the smartest approach to design games which are used for these dual purposes, but rather, if you want to do research, develop a game for research. If you want to support learning, develop a game for learning. Yeah, and something that is really important is that in the process of the game design, the revision of the games, and then the implementation process throughout, the combination of conceptual and applied knowledge of different partners. So using these different bodies of knowledge is really critical for the success of the interventions. Now, we conclude that games can trigger behavioral change in water management. There is a relation between the process participation of women and behavioral change, but we also, there is also a hype around these experiential learning games, and very many of the games are not really assessing impacts, but they claim very strong outcomes of game interventions. So our studies show that we should also keep our expectations a bit realistic. Here are some papers, some related papers we published over the recent years for the ones who want to learn more about our work. Yes, this is the end of my presentation. Thank you very much. I was considering showing you a video, but I think I went a bit over time, so probably we don't have time for this. I want to give, of course, also opportunity to ask questions.
I see that there are some questions in the chat, so maybe we can you can answer some of them, and then if we have some time, we can look at the video. I saw that earlier on in your presentation, it's more a comment than a question, but maybe you can expand more on it. Something related to how water stress is a damage not only for people but also on biodiversity. So whether this was an aspect that you considered or not. And then something about Meron is asking, and I don't know if people want to speak up. I think you can turn on your microphone and ask the question yourself. But Meron was asking if if you can clarify what it means by having an impact on mental model but not on rules. And I actually had the same question. So how? Why do you think you noticed some behavioral change, like individual behavior, but not on local governance? Maybe you can start from this.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So the ecological dimension, there is no doubt about it, and our partners are very much concerned about this, as they also work on catchment rehabilitation and forest and pastoral land rehabilitations. So there is, of course, this dimension. In the water games, I admit we did not specifically express this outcome dimension. It relates a little bit to the discussion of relational values, which can be incorporated in games. So we talked about this in this recent publication with Marco Jansen. We are discussing with our partners to develop games which more specifically target issues related to biodiversity. But the games which I have shown you today, they don't have this considered. What does it mean having impact on mental models but not rules? So first of all, now mental models maybe in terms of norms. And that basically answers already to some degree our speculation, maybe, why we see behavioral change without seeing local institutional change. So on the one hand, the local institutional change may take longer. On the other hand, maybe some of the decisions and some of the actions which we target with our intervention are less strongly driven by bylaws, even local bylaws, and more strongly by internalized norms. So if we manage with our intervention to affect norms, then this potentially could have already resulted in a behavioral change, even if the rules have not changed. So in a way, it's a little bit that we allow to being challenged on our theory of change. Theories are there to be also rejected, and so basically in this chain of effects which we assume to see, maybe there are some jumps, because the behavior is not only affected by norms, by rules, also by norms. And of course, it's a system, so there are much more interwoven aspects. I hope that helps to.
Yeah, yes. You answer my question, but I ask because you mentioned this case, in the case of Ethiopia and Ghana, and I am from Ethiopia, so I have an experience, especially on water harvesting management issues. If you are able to change the mindset, the norms, it is more appears to be also to have an impact on the rules. But they look interconnected each other. So if you are not managing something, we can
Yeah.
Part of it, so that's why I was mentioning.
Yeah, Maren, I think we didn't get the last part because at least I didn't get because the connection was poor. But I think what is important to keep in mind is that our results are not generic. So we find this in the specific context. There may be a context where the precondition for behavioral changes is institutional change. Yeah, where if in particular in the context where there are very restrictive water management rules, and I would consider Ethiopia as a case where institutions are quite strong in regulating what farmers are doing. Then probably without changing rules, it's unlikely to see changes in behavior. But this is only a speculation.
Okay, thank you.
There is another question on like the main challenges in relation also to facilitation, communication, language barriers, and things like this. So, what were the main challenges? Main, I don't know, trade-offs also about these games.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, the first challenge is to convince partners that the approach is useful. So we face a situation where partners who are used to a more conventional extension approach basically responded, yeah, why don't we just explain to them what they need to do? I mean, as we play the games, of course, there are some explanations required at the beginning, and you could see. I experienced this very often, that the participants then became tired and not very concentrated because they thought, okay, so there is again somebody coming who wants to tell us what we should do. And the energy under the tree or on the temple, wherever we played it in the school, changed really fundamentally as we started playing, as they interacted. There was laughing, there was arguing. So this created really a different atmosphere. So it required that partners experienced this change, that they also experienced that communities can find own solutions. We are aware of the communication, the facilitation challenges, and this in particular, if we want to apply this approach on a larger scale. Now, the approach we used was implemented by a local NGO, a national NGO, not local, national NGO, the Foundation for Ecological Security. Very well established NGO in India in the sphere of commons management and ecological development, sustainable development. And we trained local community members in facilitating the games. So that means they spoke the language, they not only the type of language, but also like the words to use to communicate issues to the community members. And here we faced, of course, this challenge of preventing them basically from explaining too much. Of course, they need to explain the game frame, but then they should not explain how to play the game, which decision to take in the game. So that should be left to the players, so that they have a chance to experience what the consequences of their choices are. What other challenges did we face?
Most importantly, I would like to know about the skill gap between the group and the gender, that it is possible that affect also the game during the participation, because I see also there is a group of women or men, if I see right.
Yeah, okay.
In my experience, I think it will affect the outcome also during the process.
Mm-hmm. It is something we are also just now looking deeper into. So in some games we played with mixed groups, and in these mixed groups there was the concern. So we observed very clearly women speak less in the mixed groups, yeah, proportionally. Now there was the idea that by playing with separate male and female groups, the women feel more comfortable to express their views and exchange their perspectives, and also basically create an opinion about something where they maybe perceived before that they are not so much involved in decision making. And then the idea was bringing these men and women together in the debriefing and creating discussions. In particular, in some of the states of India, Rajasthan, for instance, this is still the most favored approach. But in other states where we have the feeling that it's easier for men and women to communicate with each other, we get the feeling that even if women talk less in mixed group sessions, the interaction between men and women in this game environment about an issue which they don't discuss normally between men and women changes also the minds of the men, and in this way they can have a stronger influence on actual changing something in the community. So, but there is this tension, and it's also in other context where we discuss, but does it make more sense for women to join a women's group or a mixed group where they maybe have less power, but where the group maybe has more power? Yeah.
I also had one last question, if no one else from the participants.
Yeah, it is about, lastly, you mentioned about you do also revision of the games. So I am just wondering, it will affect also the outcome differently while you are revising the games, or it never happened?
I think these changes are, it's difficult to monitor whether, I mean, we would really need to replicate. We haven't done that. We really didn't look at how different game versions then played out. But yeah, of course, we hope that the later versions of the game work better. We hope that we improve them. Yes, please, you also had a question.
Okay,
Yeah, sorry.
thank you. That's all.
I wanted to also ask if you had instances of the conflict in a way during the games and how you managed it. Also, if, I mean, why do you think it's, because in the impacts that you were showing, you said there was less evidence about promoting system understanding. And so I wanted to ask you if you think, I mean, what's the limitation of this approach to promote system understanding?
Again, regarding the system understanding, I would not generalize. I think in our very specific case, we observed that already in the control group for the items which we used for capturing system understanding, there was already a quite advanced system understanding. Maybe we just didn't use the right items or didn't ask at the right scale to capture this dimension. Or it was just this game. I would not generalize that games cannot support system understanding, even if we don't find it in our study. Regarding conflicts, a very interesting question. So yes, of course, there have been arguments also, and people started in some game sessions to shout at each other, and this is of course something in the context of do no harm, something you would like to avoid. In general, the games with their hypothetical frame allow the players to bring conflicts on the table without pointing fingers at somebody. And we have experienced this. Yeah. So I still remember this one really very reflected young woman who played very opportunistically. And after the game, I asked her, so why did you play that way? You understood the consequences. And she said, I wanted to show my community a mirror because this is what is happening. So without telling you are doing something wrong, players have the opportunity in the game to bring up these conflict issues. But then, of course, as in cases where people shout at each other, then it's a critical, or it's very important that the facilitators are able to calm the situation down and bring it back. Okay, it was just a game, so don't take it too serious. And we have not heard reports that that this created really critical problems in the community. The only we had studies where we played in some communities with incentivized individual payments and in other communities with group payments. And there we heard that some communities complained some players complained that they didn't get the money individually. That again required that these local community members who are working with the NGO explain and try to calm the situation down. These were sensitive situations which we were facing and which we had to explain in our IRB reports. So, I mean, just in support, it's something we need to be conscious about, something we really need to manage well. Mm-hmm.
Thank you. So if there are no other questions, I think Giovanna would like to say something on behalf of DesertNet International.
Yes, thank you very much, first of all. I have a message from the chair of DesertNet International. He apologized for not being able to participate because in the meanwhile he had a presentation at a conference in Valencia in Spain in this moment. But since this webinar is recorded, he will like to listen to the webinar later on. So thank you very much to Thomas Falk. It was very interesting. I think that there will be even more questions, actually, even me, but I think that we are really very late. So I don't know if you want to, I listened that you would have liked to show us a video. I don't know, maybe now it's too late, but if it's possible and if it's public, you may send us the link to have a look to it later on. We really appreciate it if it's possible, this. Okay.
Yeah, thank you very much. The video I wanted to show you is really just recently cut. We are still putting it on the YouTube channel. As soon as it's on YouTube, I will share the link with you. It should happen within the next week.
Okay,
yeah.
Great. Thanks a lot.
And please, if somebody wants to follow up, please reach out to me. I would be very happy to engage further.
Great.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks a lot. Thank you. Have a nice day. Bye. Bye-bye.
Thank you too. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Goodbye.